over 1,200 members, approximately half of which are students and trainees. So yay, students. We're very glad that you're seeing the value in being a member of the association. At our heart and soul, we are an advocacy organization, but we also do a great deal of work in knowledge translation at our annual conference, Public Health 2017, that will be happening in Halifax in June of 2017, as well as we are the publisher of the Canadian Journal of Public Health. As I mentioned, with over half of our members being students, it's really important that we listen to your needs and respond to them accordingly. So that gave birth to this webinar series, and specifically today's webinar on how to get a job. So we're looking at other ways to stay up to date with what you're looking for as far as services from your National Public Health Association, and always welcome to feedback. So the webinar series is one of the things that we've developed this year to be able to provide some additional value to our student members. This is the third in the series, and for those of you who are members, you have access to recordings of the previous two webinars through the member portal at cpha.ca if you're interested in listening to them if you weren't able to participate in the first place. So today's session is going to be slightly interactive. So the first thing we're going to do is do a quick poll to identify where people are from. So if you want to take a moment and click on where you're at, I guess that's a little snapshot of where our participants are from. Great. So good cohort coming from Ontario, but a few from all the other provinces and territories. So thanks very much for participating in that. Now we have another quick poll to see, delve in a little bit more about who is participating in today's teleconference. So again, let us know, are you a student trainee, or which one of these categories do you fit into? Great, so the NPH students are absolutely taking it today. So, but interestingly, we have a good percentage of people who aren't students. So glad to see that our reach is going beyond the student base as well. And then another question for you today is whether or not you're a member of CPHA or the Public Health Physicians of Canada, or maybe both. Okay, so kind of a 60-40 split between CPHA members and non-members. So we're going to do our best to make you, all of you non-members, members today. Okay, so then very quickly, some tips on, or just some information about how today's session will go. Just so you are aware, all participants are muted. So if you want to ask a question or anything else, use the chat box that is in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you want to give direction or guidance to any of the speakers about speaking louder or softer or speeding up or slowing down, there are those commands that are right as part of the drop-down box, drop-down menu of the little icon of the person holding their hand up. Regarding questions, we'll try to answer everyone's questions during the teleconference today, but if we don't get to your question, we will follow up via email after the session. As I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made accessible to all CPHA members and registered webinar participants shortly following today's webinar. We'll also make the slides and the recording more broadly available 3 months after today's webinar. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, you will be redirected to a short survey. Hope that you'll please take a few moments to send us your feedback so that we can continue to improve the webinar series as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to today's presenter, Annette Chan. Annette Chan's recruitment work has taken her to career fairs and conferences across North America, and has included planning initiatives for international recruitment and public speaking as a knowledge expert in healthcare recruitment. So thank you very much, Annette, for joining us today, and everyone have a great webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ian. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you today. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm really excited to do this for you today. You've seen a brief introduction of me. I've been in healthcare since about 1998, mostly in the recruitment field. And actually, most recently, I've just moved into a new role in the last few weeks in work design and compensation, but recruitment is still a love for me, especially in healthcare. So one of the areas that I've supported as my client group is a population and public health department for Fraser Health, where I currently am working. So I've been able to get a little bit of feedback from that group as well, and hope to incorporate that in today's presentation. So thank you very much. So taking charge of your career in public health, it's a very exciting time for you in terms of completing or in the midst of completing your master's in public health, or even if you're considering doing it. What I wanted to talk about is, where do you start? Where do you begin? So there are a few ways you can help navigate through this first step in your career. The future, the next exit. What I wanted to do first is actually maybe just do a little poll here. Just a second, great. So if you can just tell me, how did you find your last job? Or even if it's potentially your first job opportunity that you're looking for, where do you assume you're going to be finding your job opportunities? So what I'm seeing here is networking, word of mouth, referred by a friend. That is definitely a great way to go, and I'm going to be talking about that in the presentation today. A lot of people think about the traditional means by which you find employment, which people think about newspapers, website ads, that sort of thing, but there are many, many means to finding your first employment. So it looks like the majority, 56%, networking, word of mouth. So yes, we'll speak about that some more. Company career website, definitely a great place to go. Intranet job boards, absolutely. And social professional networks, I'll talk about that a little bit as well. It will be very important for you, I think, you folks, in terms of establishing yourselves in your careers. So thank you very much. All right. So as you saw, I mean, there are many different means of finding your work and finding where are the jobs advertised, for example. So just so you're aware, from a recruitment perspective, most recruitment advertising doesn't really happen in the newspapers as much anymore. It really is what we say, poor bang for the buck. We really don't get a lot of responses. We don't necessarily get the appropriate responses. So we really try to target. And the ways we do this are through, it could be through association websites or magazines potentially, but more so online these days. So look to your associations that you belong to, but also internet job boards. I have a few that I would look to most often, which would be Indeed and Eluda. Indeed.ca is an aggregate job board. Basically, they pull jobs from across all companies and pull them into their website. So if you want to not have to go all the way and look into all these different websites for different companies, you could go to Indeed.ca or something like Eluda.ca, and that's what they do. They pull jobs from all online company websites. So it's a great place to go. You can also go to, of course, looking at the traditional means. Let me go back to that first of all. These days you apply online. There's usually an online application process, and you can send in your resume. By all means, make sure you do that as well. Social professional networks, as we spoke about. Conferences and career fairs, also very important as you're starting out in terms of doing your networking. Friends and mentors. We talked about refer a friend and being referred to jobs. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is where are the recruiters being told to find people? We're told that we can find people. We can find out a lot about people on the social professional networks. And if you're not sure what that means, I'm talking mostly about LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com. Internet job boards, absolutely, we post on there all the time. And then company career websites, we make sure that you know as much about us as possible as employers and about the job. So we put everything on the website. There's a wealth of information there for you to research and find. So knowing the job market, many of you have already taken this first step. And what that is going online, doing a simple search for jobs for Masters of Public Health. This brings up a wealth of information. Just for example, when I typed that in, I found a list of 100 jobs for those with a Master's in Public Health degree. So that should be very encouraging to you. These searches will get you a feel for what is out there and an idea of the positions you want to target. Something I want to point out to you, though, is look for trends, which I'm sure you're familiar with doing at this point in time. Look for trends in the types of positions that you see available. That will really give you an idea of how to perhaps target your career or your interests or the courses that you take. So, for example, if there are a lot of opportunities in harm reduction or in environmental health, of course, it should be areas that are of interest to you. But looking for these trends and the types of roles that are available will help you. It's generally an indicator of where government is funding these new roles. Some of these roles are temporary in nature, but they can grow into permanent opportunities very often. So keep that in mind. Beyond looking for just all the types of jobs that are available and the trends in these jobs, target the companies that you want to work for. By this point in time, you may already have an idea of where you want to work. I know a lot of you are from Ontario, looking at either public health or in the public sector or in nonprofit, for example. Make sure you research websites fully. There is, again, so much information on company websites. They want you to know who they are. And it's a great way to find out more, not just only about jobs, but the work culture. So what I have here is an example from my current workplace, Fraser Health, careers.fraserhealth.ca, a little plug there. What you want to do is, of course, review the job description qualifications. So usually there's a paragraph there that says, your qualifications include a master's degree in public health or related field, plus 3 to 5 years of related experience. It's a key aspect of determining your fit for the role, and you'd be surprised at how many people I find applying to jobs that do not match the job qualifications, so just make sure you take a look at that. One thing I do want to point out, though, as well, do not discount positions that ask for a bachelor degree requirement. I know you've done a lot of work to complete or working towards completion of your master's in public health, but what you need to know, too, is that employers are looking for the minimum requirement. So that's not to say that you should not look at jobs with bachelor's degrees. We're really looking for people who have experience in that area of work. So if you have a bachelor's degree and 5 to 7 years of experience, or if you have a master's degree and 1 to 3 years of experience, we're going to likely look at that equivalency in your background. So do not discount those jobs with bachelor degree requirements if the work is of interest to you. And again, it is a step in the door as well and can lead to further opportunities. Okay. The other thing I wanted to just mention, I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but just to let you know that when you do apply for roles, that each competition differs depending on who applies and who is hiring. So that is to say, if you apply for a job with a specific title, for example, harm reduction coordinator, you apply for it this month, and then it comes down, it gets filled, and 6 months later, it comes up again. Don't stop yourself from applying, because there could be a different group of candidates who have applied, which means it's a different competition. It really is about who applies at the time, and also who's doing the hiring. And again, temporary positions, do not discount those. Very, very important as you're starting out your career. It can give you the needed experience that you want to have on your resume, that an employer can look at and say, oh, great, this person's got some experience in this area. We can consider them for this other work. Knowing the job market, knowing the job. I wanted to show you a little example here of a video. Interesting candidates here. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that. I enjoyed that for many reasons. Um, so one of the things you probably don't want to hear during an interview, we've already filled this position. Okay, so the point of the video, the point of the video was know the job you are applying for. Don't go in there assuming you know what it's all about. Do your research, and yeah, that's really what the point is. So hope you enjoyed that. Okay, moving on. So knowing the job market. Besides company websites, other means of finding out what is going on in the job market, informational interviews, for example. So some of you may be familiar with this. What an information interview is it's not an interview with an employer to get a job. What it is it's an opportunity for you to get more information about the workplace in general, or what the work may be about. It is really also an opportunity for you to network and get to know individuals who are in the industry. So it's a very, very important step to pursue. And what I'm going to be talking about here is really opportunities for you to move beyond simply sending your resume into a website or applying online. This is about you stepping out and being proactive in obtaining work and networking. Okay, so these are all parts of that. So job shadowing is another opportunity where you can potentially learn more about a job by sitting with someone who's actually doing that work. Job shadowing might be more available to you with individuals that you know very well. So, for example, if you've been networking and gotten to know some individuals in the field, you may ask them at that point, is it possible for me to sit with you or someone in the role for an hour or so, just to really see what that work is about? And that's, again, another great way for you not to only get to know the job, but for them to get to know you. And that's an important point, of course. Co-ops and internships, I think, are a given. Make the most use of your time in those work in that experience to leverage your networks, really get to know the individuals who are supporting you, and maintain those relationships. Another way to get to know the work and to network is in career fairs and conferences. These are great venues to have one-on-one time with recruiters or people in the field. I have some examples of that. So I've attended many job fairs and conferences, and I do have individuals coming up to me very well prepared, asking me specific questions about the organization, and they do manage to somehow say a little bit about themselves at the same time. They'll ask for my business card and ask to connect with me. And LinkedIn, I love for that very reason. It makes it very easy. Very easy to do that. So maybe I'll address one or two questions here. Someone's asked the question, what's the best way to initiate an information interview? One of the best ways to do that really is by starting by getting the contacts. And how are you going to get those contacts? Well, you could do that through attending career fairs and conferences, for example, and finding people through there. You could do that through LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is an incredible resource. A lot of people are on LinkedIn. Look up the company, look up individuals, look up recruitment with the company, or look up public health, Fraser Health, for example. You could ask to link in with them online, and then once they do, if they do accept your invitation to link in, you could then send them a quick in-mail, they're called, and just request, could I have a few minutes of your time? So if they have the opportunity to do so, they would, do that with you, spend a few moments, and then you can ask if you could potentially have an information interview, or if they know someone else who it may be appropriate to approach. Most people want to be helpful, and it's really a matter of time whether they can support that. So if you're able to, again, work through your networks to do that, that would be the best way to go. So I hope I've answered that question. Associations. Associations is an important part of your networking, of course. This is your industry. CPHA is a great way to do so, and also any local associations that you could be a part of. So what I would encourage you to do there is not only attending, but perhaps volunteering, and this will get you in touch with those individuals who are a bigger part of those associations. They can then in turn introduce you to other folks. I had an experience once where actually just a few months ago, I attended project management conference, and I met an individual there who had started volunteering with PMI. He was an international, he came from somewhere else, came as an international student, and was trying to start his career here. And so he started by participating in associations, volunteering, getting to know some of the different presenters. And in fact, one of the presenters who was at that conference came to me directly and said, I have a great person here I want to introduce you to. I know that you're involved in different roles at Fraser Health, and I just wanted to highlight this person for you. So I happened to get to know this individual better. And in fact, he does have a great skill set for a particular area within Fraser Health. So I introduced him to the managing consultant there, and I'm hoping that will work out to, you know, a great ending there. So it does work. You just need to get out there and network. So join the part using the professional associations, the online networks like LinkedIn, and of course your friends, your mentors, so individuals who supported you in your internships and co-ops. Maintain those relationships. That will be very important for you. Okay. So knowing yourself. It's very important to, of course, know yourself. Many of you may be familiar with the LEADS capabilities. I think that's a really important first step. LEADS. I'm sure you can look it up online, and I believe it was spoken to in the earlier seminar. So I won't speak to that too much, but certainly that's something that as an organization at Fraser Health and all of the health employers in BC, those are important capabilities for individuals working in healthcare in general, and they're written into our job descriptions too. This knowing LEADS helps you in terms of knowing yourself. Where do your passions lie, and what are your career goals? By this point, you may already know this, whether you want to work in nonprofit or in the public healthcare system. Do you want to be an academic or a researcher, or do you want to work out in the community? Just keep hold of that. Think about what your passions are, but also what I also want to balance that out with is if you see opportunities that are not necessarily in the field that you've been dreaming about, but it's areas, an area of work that you've touched on or had some experience in, don't discount it. This could be the means of getting into the field, and it's an important first step. Once you get your foot in the door, as I mentioned before, you can determine where to focus your efforts further. It's really, again, about people getting to know you, about how you do your work, and how you show up at work. So what is your value proposition? I'm going to use a couple of terms here which are more marketing type of terms, but they really apply to you now as an individual in today's workplace. What is your value proposition? So this is a promise of value to be delivered and acknowledged. For an employer, what that means is, what is this person going to give me? What is this person going to add to my team potentially? That's what they will learn about that from you based on how you show up online, for example, from your resume, from your cover letter. So know what it is that you are offering to the employer in terms of your values. What you want to be known for. Beyond that, what is your personal brand? Again, it's kind of a marketing term, and most people think about, you know, the Kardashians or whatnot, but try to stay away from that. Really what that's about is, I'll read the definition, the ongoing process of establishing a prescribed image or impression in the mind of others about an individual, group, or organization. So in this case, this applies to you. What is your personal brand? And how do you build that? Well, when you talk about your personal brand, it's really how you show up, again, when people say research you. So you might type in, for example, my name, Annette Chan. You'll see my LinkedIn profile. You'll see the different posts that I've made, and you'll see what am I posting about will be part of my personal brand. So I'll highlight, say, job search tips, or I'll highlight really exciting things happening in healthcare, Fraser Health, for example. And this will be all part of the image that really I want to portray out there to individuals that are looking at me. So it may demonstrate something that your next employer is looking for. And what's important about it, though, is in terms of your personal brand, make sure that's authentic and it really is you. And what you're either posting about or tweeting about is really what your interests are, and where your passion is, and because people will be able to suss that out. People will be able to see it. And by thinking about your personal brand, it will help you, employers find it hard to know people without meeting them face to face. This is another way for an employer to know what you are about before meeting you. So remember what I said, when you apply online, yes, that's absolutely important. That's your very first step. But if you want an employer to get to know you, how you show up also online is going to be important in terms of your personal brand. This is the only other way. If they haven't met you face to face, this is the only other way that they're going to know who you're or what you're about. So you need to really think about that carefully. I'll talk about that a little bit more too. So marketing yourself the traditional way. The traditional way is, of course, with your resume and your cover letter. Having a resume, your contact information, objective, education, experience, honors, and activities, absolutely important. Do not discount it. In the field that you're in, I don't think it's necessarily to be exceptionally creative in it. It's just really important to know what your education and experience is in full or in an organized fashion. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, because there is plenty of information online about how to put together your resume and your cover letter. Actually, I will be speaking a little bit more to that later, but I don't want to delve into it too much. It is important, though, just to make sure you keep your resume up to date. Make sure when you're applying online, you put your information in full. And the reason I say that is, as a recruitment consultant, it makes it quicker and easier for us on our end to be able to find your information, to know about you, and make sure, and it's one way for you to make sure that your resume doesn't get missed or overlooked. Okay. Make sure that when you're applying online that you keep your online profiles up to date. Make sure you attach any relevant documents, but not too many. You shouldn't need to. And another way to get yourself out there is on LinkedIn, of course. With your LinkedIn profile, it is really pretty much an online resume. So that's a really great way of putting yourself out there. And actually on Indeed.ca, they do have ways of uploading. You can upload your resume directly to there. It does not have your contact information specifically, but it has your name, your education, your experience, and it allows you to be found. Someone asked a question, how many pages for a resume? So generally, I would say 2 pages is adequate. 3 maybe. Generally, 2 is probably best. It prints out nicely. And as a recruitment consultant, I will tell you, when recruiters go through all the applications they go through, generally 3 minutes at the most per application. So you don't need to have a really long resume. Everything that you do should fit on there. And then that should be enough to determine whether you meet the qualifications. Beyond that, then you can present yourself with supplementary information at an interview, for example. So if you want to bring examples of work that you've done, you can bring that to an interview. Okay. Okay, so I said I was going to speak a little bit about the resume. Make sure it's concise, succinct, factual. Again, no more than 2 to 3 pages. Very straightforward. Again, we don't need to be extremely creative here, not certainly in this field necessarily. In terms of how your resume looks. Yes, in terms of how you do your work, yes, that makes sense, but not in terms of how your resume looks. We really, as recruitment consultants, just want to see all the important information, okay? Don't overinflate your experience. Recruiters generally can read through that, or if it looks confusing, it may look like you're trying to hide something. Make sure you indicate the length of time employed in a role. That sort of thing. You don't need to include any pictures or personal details other than your name and contact information. Although on LinkedIn, we see people's faces all the time, so I'm still not sure how I feel about that. Creativity, I mentioned it depends on what you're applying for. So let me see here. So someone's asked a question about copying of resumes to text box or attaching resumes. Will creative resumes get you more noticed? If a resume looks nice and tidy, um, beautifully put together, that is absolutely great because it really speaks to your organizational skills. It speaks to your quality of work. So absolutely make sure it looks great. Um, creative resumes won't necessarily get you more noticed. It really is about the content and really highlighting what you've done, and the courses, your education, for example. Okay. And the other question, just kind of further to that, why are they being copied to text boxes? So it's just something about online applications. In terms of the volume of applications we receive, so I'll just tell you, for Fraser Health, we're an organization of 26,000 employees. On a weekly basis, we'll have anywhere from, I don't know, 300 to 400 jobs up on our website at any given point in time. That will be equivalent to, I think in a monthly basis, I believe 10,000 applications per month. I'm kind of hesitating because I'm not sure if that's per week. I think that's per month. So if you think about that and the number of individuals that we have working in our recruitment departments, we have a number of them, but we have to get through information quickly. And that's why we use online application systems, because they help us go through individuals' information in a methodical and efficient way. And so that's why it's important to fill out those online applications in full. Often they're the first information that a recruiter will receive. And the resume is often supplementary. Now, I'm only speaking to Fraser Health specifically. It may be different with different companies. Of course, if you're dealing with a smaller organization, it may be that they just work with the resumes. But in a large organization like Fraser Health or other health authorities, they need to be able to get through that information in a really efficient way. And that's what online applications do. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust one more question here and then move on. On the experience section on the resume, I mentioned to include the scope or quantifying. So what I mean by that is when you say, so under your work, generally how I like to see a resume, and this is only in my personal way of, my personal preference, is the job title, the dates of employment in terms of month and year, and then under that, a paragraph about what you did in that role. And that could include not just I worked on projects related to blah, 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 but in terms of the scope of that, it would be saying I worked on a project value of $50,000 it entailed interviewing of 400 candidates. I produced, so it's really quantifying in terms of numbers, giving some, putting some parameters around it. And what that will help an employer is to see, okay, they say they have experience in projects, but what does that really mean? Have they worked on $3 million projects? Have they worked with, have they worked across organizations, for example, or have they only worked on it's really important to give a sense of the scope of the project that you're working for. So it's in terms of your internal and external contacts, for example, the dollar value, the number of individuals involved. Those are just some examples that I'm just coming up with off the top of my head, but you could probably look online and see some examples of that. So next, in your cover letter, what you want to do is highlight information that's not necessarily noted in your resume that is specific to the job details. Okay, so you can't fit everything on your resume. It is 2 pages. So what you want to do in your cover letter is take that opportunity to say, in my role at blah, 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 or in my practicum at blah, 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 I did this, which is related to, I think, what you're asking for, something like that. You can also highlight how much you know about the organization in that, and make sure that it is well written and formatted and error-free. Again, this is one way for an employer to see your quality of work, your written communication skills, as well as your interest in the role and your understanding of the job. You might not understand everything about it, but it's important to show that you have some understanding. And also, it can help an employer assess the suitability, your suitability in terms of your fit and your motivation for the role. Okay. Someone else asked, can scope also be included in the cover letter? Yes, it can be. Well, I would actually recommend to stick to some core examples on your resume. I think the risk is if you try to include too much on your cover letter, you're going to have a 2-page cover letter, and you don't want that. You want to have really just try to keep that to 1 page. It's really a snapshot of your experience. Okay. So, but what I want to say is this is the traditional way. Very important, absolutely needed. You still need to do this, but relying on the traditional means only is not the best way to get an employer's attention. So, as I mentioned before, you want to be proactive. I talked about this earlier in terms of your informational interviews, job shadowing. This is actually the same slide titles or bullet points. Co-ops and internships, career fairs and conferences, and networking. I really want to emphasize this. While you're applying online, sending your resume in, and looking at those online job boards, you're also continuously at the same time in a parallel process networking. You're going to leverage your networks to gain informational interviews, your experience in co-ops and internships, and your new contacts through career fairs and conferences. You're going to leverage these into informational interviews. If you're finding you're not getting called to interviews, start with the informational interviews. Okay. Your networking can get you the job, and the other way of doing it as well is, again, LinkedIn is a great way to start those conversations. And I do have a few individuals who I've had, based on their qualifications, I did maintain correspondence with them. And, I was hoping to find them positions, with Fraser Health, and it does happen. And so we do maintain those relationships. We do get to know people as well. And, we do take a personal interest in some people. It does happen. It is tough, though, because of the volume of applicants and that sort of thing. But don't be afraid to reach out on LinkedIn. So marketing yourself, your online presence. I see I'm at 9:43. I'm going to try to, I've been answering a lot of questions, so I'm just going to try to move a little further, quicker through this. Where are you going to find recruiters that you can engage with? I talked about LinkedIn. You can go on to blogs and Glassdoor, for example. I think I have that as a link on the end of the presentation. These are where you can find names of individuals that you can engage with. I did talk about getting a LinkedIn profile, so I obviously have one. I have quite a few connections, over 500. I think I'm over 700. This is based on my previous role in recruitment. Make sure that you connect in with individuals and participate in social media in a professional way in terms of what you write about, your name, and you can use it to reinforce your personal brand. Okay. So here are some examples of other social media that people are involved in. Twitter, LinkedIn is an example of one of my LinkedIn contacts, and she liked a post by somebody else. It started generating a conversation online. This is, again, this tells people what your interests are. Okay. Okay. You can also use LinkedIn to get individuals to recommend you. I think that's really, really important. It's another thing that an employer can look at and say, oh, this is what this person is saying about, the person who's applied to this job, right? So use it. Learn what LinkedIn is about and how it can support you. Okay. I'm going to address, there's another question here, but I'm going to address that in a little bit here in terms of relevant coursework as examples. And I would say, yes, you do want to indicate that as well. It's actually more important, for my clients to see that as opposed to me. For me as a recruiter, I'm looking at the basic qualifications. For my client who's actually going to be doing the interview and the hiring, or if I'm sitting with them, I could be sitting on the interview panel as well, but it's more important for my client to see your coursework. That is absolutely important for them in terms of the relevance to the role. They will be looking at that as well. Okay. All right, so just again, put your resume on resume databases, email recruitment contacts you found, send them your resume, follow up without being annoying, brand yourself through what you tweet and blog about, and this can help an employer assess potential fit even before an interview. Just kind of go through that. So in summary, let me just go back here. If you're not familiar with Twitter, one of the things about Twitter is you can follow organizations, you can join in on conversations, and it can, again, reveal a lot about your interests and potential fit for specific roles. In LinkedIn as well, you can join groups of, there's probably a public health group for Canada there, I'm quite sure. You can like and join conversations and share posts and ask for recommendations from colleagues and clients. I mentioned that earlier. Okay. Just remember your personal brand, what you're trying to highlight, and also know that you can be found, conversely, you can be found on social media. So when I talk about highlighting your personal brand, just make sure you know as well, people can find your Facebook posts, your personal Facebook. You probably want to lock that up. I would personally, because really I like to keep that separate from my professional, who I am at work or how I show up at LinkedIn. I like to try to keep those separate. So, how often, so someone's asking me a question, how often do you search for a potential interviewee on LinkedIn? So for a lot of the roles that I've been involved in, they are quite difficult to fill in terms of the specific skill set or work experience that we're looking for. So absolutely, I look on LinkedIn all the time. A lot of employers are. A lot of recruiters are using it and leveraging it. And recruiters are a lot more proactive than they might have perhaps used to be. And there's LinkedIn is just a great means for us to gain access to a greater variety of individuals. So just make sure that you're on there. It's very important. You can do so much. You can put so much information on your LinkedIn profile. And how do you want to be known in public health? Your resume and cover letter are unidimensional. What I've been talking about today is really about letting employers see more of you in a multi-dimensional way, getting to know the real you through additional means. That is through in-person informational interviews, through networks, your posts or your blogs. These are all ways that you can highlight yourself. So don't sit back and wait. Just get out there. Don't be afraid. Be proactive and show people how you would show up at work. So thank you. I think I'm going to address a few more of your questions here, and I hope I'm going to, I'm not sure if I'll have missed any, but one of the questions here, we've got a few more minutes. How much time should you wait before following up with a resume submission? Probably a week is probably a good time frame, but you can also ask them when you could follow up in a week's time, ask the question, can you let me know when is a good time for me to follow up again? I know for an organization like ours in Fraser Health, there could be many reasons why um, a job posting interview process might be delayed. Many reasons. And I know it can be frustrating for applicants on the other end because this whole time they might not know what's happening. Um, and there could be quite a bit going on that have nothing to do with the applicants. Really, it could be about operational requirements and just the busyness of the day to day. So don't be afraid to ask the question after a week and ask when is an appropriate time for me to check in again. It might be 2 weeks, for example. So people will tell you, just don't be afraid to ask the question. Okay. So another question. A question about the cover letter. So in an organization, again, like ours, what we try to do in our recruitment department is um, we're trying to make sure that our clients get the qualified applicants and that they're not inundated um, by a slew of applicants that takes them away from their operational requirements, right? So that's really what my job is. So when it comes to writing the cover letter and addressing it, that sort of thing, you don't necessarily have to address it to the person who's actually doing the hiring. You can address it to whom it may concern. I think really that's not a bad idea, but if you are able to find out who it is, you may be able to find out who it is through, again, your networks or looking online. Again, doing your research may be a way to find the name of the individual that you want to address it to, but that's not a huge concern. Really, it's about the content. So another person asked a question about salary, and I think it's way up in here. Let me see if I can find the question. Okay, so the question was, how does the bachelor's or master's degree relate to salary expectations when it's not posted? My situation is a master's in public health plus 10 years work experience, so I'm not entry level, right? So a master's degree versus a bachelor's degree. So while a master's degree can give weighting to how we evaluate a job, it is not the be all and end all. We're looking at the combination of the job, of the requirements that we're looking for. So it would be education and experience, plus it could be in terms of your leadership experience as well, or supervisory experience, those components in addition to. So a master's degree above a bachelor's degree in and of itself does not necessarily mean a higher salary. Generally, though, it will be, so if you have, for example, a job that asks for 1 to 3 years of experience, and one of the jobs asks for a bachelor's degree and the other one asks for a master's degree, but they both ask for 1 to 3 years of related experience, then generally, yes, that master's degree position will probably be slightly higher rated, but there are other factors to consider. So at times when you see that, they may actually be the same level of salary. So it's not a bad assumption, but there are other criteria as well in terms of salary. So another question I have from someone is where to find volunteer opportunities or internships with an undergraduate degree. So I think exploring that through, I think the career counselors for the school that you're attending, I think discussing that with them, getting into a co-op opportunity with the school as an undergrad, I think is probably one of the best ways to go. I know in our own department, we've often hired individuals into who came on co-op practicums and they've ended up becoming permanent employees. So it's always a great way to go. Volunteer opportunities, again, could be with the associations that you join. So they may want assistance with setting up for a particular conference that they're putting together. Those are some ways of getting involved in volunteering. You know what I'm going to do, actually? I want to go to, there's a lot of questions coming in, but I wanted to go to some of the information that I got from the Department of population and public health, I asked them for some input from them and what they're looking for. So some of the things they're looking for are, where are you doing your practicum placements and its relevance to the job that you're applying for. Oftentimes they're looking for a skill set in project management, because a lot of the jobs that you're going to be doing require that. Critical thinking skills in terms of literature review, critical analysis methodology is also important. And other specific courses, program evaluation, because a lot of the roles that we have integrate monitoring and evaluation into the planning, and you need to be able to demonstrate any change or impact as a result of the work that you're doing. So those are some of the tips that they gave me. I've summarized it very quickly, but I'll just say again, project management coursing, program evaluation, looking at where your practicum placements are and highlighting that as well, and then your critical thinking in terms of the literature review.
Yes, thanks, Annette. Thanks for your wonderful presentation, and these have been fantastic questions coming in. I'm sorry that we won't have time to address all of them on the webinar, but we would like to follow up and provide responses to all of your questions by email. And I'll create a Facebook group as well and invite everyone who's registered so that we can have some more conversation online. So I do want to just follow up, since we will end right on the hour. I just have a few slides to go through to highlight a few opportunities here at the Canadian Public Health Association. So our next webinar is happening on December 1st, and the topic is on finding a public health practicum placement with presenters Frank Welsh, CPHA's Director of Policy, who does manage our practicum placements here, and Shannon LeBlanc, who is a recent MPH graduate, and she will share experiences from her practicum. So registration is now open, and you can register online via our website or using the link that's posted. A few opportunities at CPHA, so for those of you looking to volunteer and build up your resume, this might help. We have a call open for members to join CPHA's Student and Early Career Committee. The deadline's tomorrow. I'm also looking for someone who might be interested in helping out to develop social media content. We manage a Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn account, and those are all full-time jobs in and of themselves. So if you have some expertise in this area, shoot us an email. We'd be happy. I'd be happy to hear how you might be able to assist with that. And finally, if you like to write articles, we're always looking for submissions from students for our website and our newsletters. So you can send an email for more information about what type of content we're interested in. But this, again, would be a way to enhance your publication record. Finally, Ian Colbert mentioned our upcoming conference at the beginning of the webinar. This is a fantastic networking opportunity because some of the leaders in public health attend this conference on an annual basis. So Public Health 2017 is happening June 6th to 8th in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And we have a call for submission open right now for abstracts. And as an extra incentive, we have a $1,000 award for students. So if you apply and your abstract is highly rated, you will be invited to participate in a special session where you'll be judged, and the winner will receive a $1,000 award. So the deadline is coming up on November 29th for oral abstracts and poster abstracts. And yes, students are highly encouraged to submit, and we often get a great turnout of students, and there are special events scheduled just for students throughout the conference. Just some examples of the work that we do here at CPHA for those who aren't members and are not aware of what we do, but we're a policy and advocacy organization. We published position statements on early childhood education and care. We submitted a position related to the legalization, regulation, and restriction of access to cannabis. And we're advocating for the phase out of coal-fired power plants across the country. So those are just some areas that we're working in. So here are some key contacts. My name is Emma Malik. I'm the Manager of Communications. Feel free to follow up with me if you have any questions about the information that I just presented. You can also contact our Student Director, Monty, and her email address is listed there. So thank you to everyone for participating today. It's been great to have your support, and Annette, you did a fabulous presentation. Thank you very much. And like I said, we'll follow up with additional questions. So feel free to continue typing them now or send me an email. I'll be ending this webinar and you'll be directed to fill out a short survey. So thanks in advance for your time. And yes, the